Good evening. Welcome to the March 9th meeting of the Board of Education in Mount Vernon City School District. Mr. McCormick, could you please call the roll?
Good evening. Trustee Red.
Present.
Trustee Turnquist.
Present.
Trustee Crump. Trustee Mitchell.
Present.
Trustee Patterson.
Present.
Trustee McOwen.
Present.
Trustee White.
Present.
Trustee Saunders.
Present.
Trustee Miller.
Present.
Quorum is present, ma'am.
All righty. Do we have any communications from the public this evening?
We do. Our first communication reads as follows. Greetings, trustees and Mount Vernon community. For the past 8 or more years, I have been hoping for more engagement and follow-up on the issue of an all disciplines, all ages, African-centric curriculum that would be more appropriate and just for our students and our community. That hope has been eclipsed by the recent social justice demands that have now made commonplace such requests as honest and anti-racist education. Unfortunately, I become aware that the challenge to meet the moment for the Mount Vernon City School District has been served by a more minimalist goal of African-American literature at a limited scale of grade level application.
I'm sorry, put that phone face down now.
Please explain if this is a plan to be expanded to an African-centered curriculum or not. If not, why not? Second and finally, I've been tracking the national trend to install broadband wireless and other 5G related services in many areas of the United States. Among these efforts by Verizon and Spectrum, corporations which are targeting Mount Vernon as well are being steadily resisted by communities that are concerned about the health risks of this technology. While our community is well overdue for an equitable distribution of technology solutions that enable 21st century education, the most viable and risk-averse solution seems to not be 5G millimeter wave technology, but municipal-owned wired broadband. Are you as a body prepared to support the municipal-owned solution? If not, are you prepared to face the health risks to our children and educational staff, along with related legal consequences outlined in the webinar linked below? Sincerely, L. Jeff Monroe. Our next letter reads, my purpose this evening is to alert the Board of Trustees on the development of a potential Harvard Business School case study on Mount Vernon City School District. Cases are primarily used for class discussion by business school students. Cases offer students experience in dealing with complex, realistic situations with an emphasis on decision making. Through working with me, the HBS Research and Case Writing Group has finalized a case lead summary where I am the protagonist. The next step is for me to obtain sponsorship by an HBS professor for full case development. I provided a copy of the case lead summary so that the trustees can review with the potential case issues and topics. I've also provided a second document that has an overview of the HBS case development and answers to frequently asked questions. Over a week ago, I briefed Dr. Hamilton on the development of the potential HBS case. I'm the host of the case, but I'll continue to keep Dr. Hamilton abreast of the case's development. Thank you, Robert D. Jones, school parent and district employee. That concludes communications from the public.
Madam President, if I may, I'd like to respond, please.
Yes.
First to Mr. Monroe, the district has done some extraordinary work around DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion training, which includes a very high level training for our district staff around how to deliver culturally relevant curriculum. One of the things that we have been focused on over the last 6 months, actually, 7 months in fact, is making certain our teachers are well equipped to answer questions, deliver curriculum, understand cultural implications as a result of what's been happening on a national level. So before we can really work as intimately as we ought based on what's happening on a national level, it's imperative that we train our teachers. And I would like very much to be able to share with Mr. Monroe some of the literature we have been using on our Wednesday sessions with our staff and how involved and engaged our staff have been in these discussions. And then we will move into furthering, because we already have started the work on making certain that our curriculum reflects the people in our community. But then there's another level of work that we will be engaged in with this culturally relevant and culturally sensitive curriculum that is at the forefront of our curriculum revision cycles as well. Regarding Mr. Jones has shared information with me about this study. I'm actually very interested in this study and finding out more about how this data will be utilized, how Mount Vernon will be referenced in the data, and how we might be able to use this research once the study is done. And I will certainly keep the board abreast on that as soon as I get more information. I don't know how long the study is, for example. I don't know if it's a quantitative study or qualitative study, or if it's a longitudinal study, in which even I would like to know when it will end. But I'll reach out to Mr. Jones by way of email and respond to it, because he did send me an email and respond to that as well.
So well, I have a question. So should Mr. Monroe find out more about the direction we're going in through the Education Committee? Would that be the platform, Dr.
That
Hamilton?
would be the perfect platform, because the Education Committee is well versed on what we've been doing around this series and where we're heading. Trustee Turnquist Jones is doing a phenomenal job with facilitating those conversations. So he can certainly reach out to Dr. Gorman, who can connect him with Trustee Turnquist Jones, and she can decide which agenda would be most appropriate for him to attend.
Okay, so basically
I
what
think-
we're saying, go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And Jeff Monroe, I know Jeff Monroe as well. And I think it'd be really excellent also if when I meet with him, that I can also share the literature that that we are studying together as one, that Dr. Bennett Conroy gave me. I think that he will be extremely excited about the platform and where we are going with this.
Great.
Great, so the process has begun and we're in the process of furthering it. Okay, now on the broadband, municipal supported wired broadband, I don't know.
I'm going to ask Mr.
McGrath.
Yes.
So there's the new technology is the 5G technology, and what the letter seems to suggest is that there may be concerns around the health concerns with 5G. Now that's something that a lot of professionals have debunked. Some people have, some people believe that's true. Some people, there was something in across, I think it was in England, where they thought 5G was causing some other health issues. So I can't really speak to that except to say that I haven't seen concrete evidence one way or the other about 5G, and I think they're still being researched on, and I don't know that that anybody can definitively say, based on the research that's available, that there's definitive proof that 5G has health concerns. So I think that's something that we can't speak on at this point.
Well, that's not really our purview. It's really more the city. But I think the issue on the broadband, the municipal broadband, that would also be the city. And I think the school district's position, I guess we just are interested, Mr. McGrath, in being able to serve as many students as possible with as robust an infrastructure as possible.
100%. And obviously the more points of access that are available, the better, right? So if the city decided to pursue providing Wi-Fi access across the city, that would be a good thing. That'd be a good thing for the students. It might be a good thing, arguably for the population as a whole. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Let's see. Dr. Hamilton, do you have a report?
I do. So officially, good evening to all. And I do have a couple of things I would like to share with you this evening. Two will be in the form of a presentation. First, I'd just like to reiterate that our Fast Break program, which was our focused academic supplemental teaching program that we ran over the March break, was successful. And how could it not be? You're essentially getting one-on-one instruction from tutorial services from your teacher or a teacher. And so we are extending that now for the spring break, and that will include our K through 8 students. We are expanding it. And our goal again is to support students who we have identified who may have shown some regression. I think we can anticipate nationally that there will be a COVID slide that many of our students experience, although we're fortunate in that we've actually seen some increases on some of our data as a result of even during COVID. So we are very hopeful that this spring break, a FAST program over the spring break, will yield more favorable results. We have also been preparing and participating in Lobby Day, which is being done virtually. Lobby Day is an opportunity for superintendents and business officials to meet with different members of the Senate and different members of the budget and the governor's budget and finance committee to directly express our concerns and to raise any kind of specific, distinct characteristics from their individual districts that we need them to keep on their radar as they anticipate budget allocations. We have stressed upon them, and I shared a rough draft of my notes with the board over the weekend, but our most significant concerns are obviously state aid. And it's each year we have this opportunity to have these intimate conversations, and sometimes I frankly find myself quite discouraged because I don't feel like we're getting anywhere. But at the same time, having audience, knowing that these people are taking the time to listen to us is certainly complimentary, to say the very least. So the governor's proposal provides an increase in our aid contingent on the receipt of federal funding to mitigate the state aid cuts that we were anticipating. The governor's additional proposals call for a change in block grant funding, which, if it takes place, will have a devastating impact on our transportation aid. So we have asked that the powers that be vote against something that would compromise funding for Mount Vernon, particularly in the form of transportation aid. We have also asked them to understand that the proposal that each taxpayer receive a full tax bill, which would offset a check that the state would mail to homeowners, would be beneficial, of course, to our taxpayers. And our school district should be noted for our efforts to ensure that our taxpayers are eligible for those rebates because of our fiscal management. We are also keeping on their radar the fact that, like many districts, COVID has put a strain on our budget. And while it is true that there are some experiences we did not have because schools were virtually not operating at full capacity, there have been a lot of unanticipated costs. Of course, there are some we can anticipate that there will be some kind of surcharge because health insurance companies are obviously being hit pretty hard because of claims. We also know that there's been some significant cost for PPE, so we put this on their radar as well. And of course, we have expressed, again, that our community is overtaxed, and our taxpayers' ability to support our schools is a little different than some other school districts. So it is imperative that the state fully fund its formula and lift the burden from the taxpayers in Mount Vernon in particular. We have also raised another unique feature in that we were already at 10% of our students identified as homeless, and that number is growing as a result of COVID. We don't even have the actual numbers, frankly, because there are students who have not yet reported, our parents who have not reported that they are homeless because they are in temporary housing with extended family members, some even in other states as a result of COVID. So we are very concerned about how that will impact our students. We have also raised the issue that the state owes Mount Vernon about $10 million in back building aid. This is an issue we continue to raise, and we keep it on their radar. Right now, we are scheduled to be repaid in 2027. We need the money now, and we have said we need the money now. We have also expressed that we need the state to take a different approach on charter schools. That this idea that money following students does not impact communities like Mount Vernon is misleading. It absolutely it compromises us tremendously because it does not reduce our expense because the children are leaving. I just spoke in opposition to another charter school that's proposed in Mount Vernon. Albeit grand in its design, it still will be a burden to our community. And lastly, we have asked the state to look very carefully at up-county construction, the up-county construction cost index. There has been legislation vetoed by the governor to include us in New York City and Long Island in terms of the cost for construction. The effect of this problem is that our maximum cost allowance, or MCA, is lower than it should be, and that we cannot do construction at the same lower cost as areas upstate. And we urge the passage of this legislation, which would be vital to our mission, of course, to help our students and improve our facilities. This will be imperative as we begin to put plans in place to address our BCS, our Building Condition Survey, which is something that we will be spending more time on discussing in greater detail in a future meeting. So those are the issues that I've been able to articulate to the senators that we have spoken to. We still have Senator Bailey on schedule. Assemblyman Pretlow is on schedule. We have already met with Congressman Bowman is on the calendar as well that we will be speaking with, and we've already spoken with Susan Mayer, yes. Not Susan, Senator Mayer, I'm sorry. So those are the items that we have put on the radar. I'd also like to share with the board I guess we will do our superintendent action plan presentation first, and then I'll share with you a very brief overview on the work of the reopening committee. The superintendent's action plan is really our way to document and chronicle the administration's efforts and progress with meeting the board approved goals. The board adopted these goals in 2019 toward the end of the year. I think it was in December of 2019. These goals were developed collaboratively with the board during a retreat that I think was in August or September. But it was a very deliberate process. What's unique about Mount Vernon, which I think is to our credit as a team, and when I talk about the team, I'm talking about the board and the administration, is we've been able to collaborate on district goals that also become superintendent goals, in addition to any merit goals, obviously, but in terms of district goals that ensure that we are all moving in the same direction, on the same bus, and everybody in the right seat. So I'm very proud of that. So this is our report to you on our progress towards meeting those goals. And it is a collaborative effort. The members of the cabinet that are listed here all share in these goals, along with our principals who share in these goals. And we've provided some evidence by way of an appendix to show you what that progress looks like quantitatively. So our first goal is the goal that's centered around student achievement, and there were certain indicators that the board identified during our retreat. The first is pre-K through 3, looking at a percentage increase of all students reading at or above grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And the target was to increase district-wide on an average of 5% per year over the next 5 years, which was a very thoughtful goal, and one that is sustainable, realistic, and achievable with the right supports. Our goal, of course, has been to make sure that the teachers and principals have the supports and resources necessary to meet these goals. The board's goal is, the board's responsibility is to monitor and make sure that I have what I need as the superintendent, and my job is to make sure principals and teachers have what they need in order for us to work in concert around these goals. The second indicator is a goal targeting 3rd through 8th grade students and the percentage of all students, and these are our test years, achieving on the NYSED or the New York State Education Department rating of 3 or better, 3 being recognized as the state's current designation as proficient or better in English language arts and mathematics, with an increase of 3 to 5% per school year over the next 5 years. Again, a very thoughtful, deliberate goal. And then looking at our key indicator for our secondary students, or 9th through 12th grade students, so that by the year 2025, the percentage of students completing, graduating in the 4-year cohort will increase district-wide to 80%. And we'll be able to show you our progress with meeting that goal. Our second goal looks at educating the whole child and looking at an individualized plan designed specifically to address each student, similar to an IEP or an educational or individualized educational plan that a student with special needs would have, where our goal is to make sure there is a plan for every student in our district, whether an IEP exists or not. Looking at our various data streams, each student will have a Mount Vernon City School District experience monitored by a uniform system that enable teachers and administrators to track and understand the student's progress from year to year and from school to school. So this is very specifically looking at a system that helps our teachers understand the indicators of success and opportunities for growth for every student in our district, that follows them like a portfolio, an academic portfolio, from year to year. Our second goal, our second indicator under this goal is a holistic approach around student wellness. The district will begin to develop and implement, by the opening of the 22-23 school year, a comprehensive plan to support the social emotional needs of all students. This includes a curriculum that will look at anti-bullying education, mindfulness, restorative justice, and conflict resolution skills. This is a goal, a goal that I think is very important, particularly now as we look at any mental wellness approaches that we need to take for our students. And we have also looked at programs that will support our teachers and staff members as well. Indicator 2.3 is diverse pathways to secondary education, understanding that education is broad and diverse, and so must be the various pathways available to students in order to reach their full potential. So each of our school districts will, each of our high schools, will develop an equitable profile for our students that is comprehensive and rigorous, which ensures diverse pathways that gives them the opportunity to explore their own interests and achievements throughout their high school experience. At Mount Vernon High in particular, it will become a leading institution and offering non-traditional pathways for graduation. When we had this discussion in our retreat, the board was particularly interested in making certain that we expanded offerings at Mount Vernon High School to ensure that students had a unique experience there, including college partnerships, CTE offerings, flexible scheduling, which may have also included a work schedule, a part-time shared experience where students may be able to gain work experience while they are in school at the same time. And of course, the introduction of the International Baccalaureate program, which we were able to accomplish ahead of schedule. And indicator 2.4 is beyond high school, getting data in place, a mechanism in place to see how well our students are succeeding beyond graduation. So by the 2025 graduating class, 75% of our students will have applied to a 4 or 2 year college, trade, or conservatory, and or completed a career vocational training program. So this means that putting these programs in place, we now need a mechanism to monitor how students are accessing them and using them as they make their post-high school experiences. And lastly, goal 3 is our goal that looks at fiscal planning. It's SMART planning goal, which is proactive and forward thinking relative to reducing, increasing revenue sources and reducing the burden on the local taxpayer. So this strategic plan was designed as a part of our annual budget planning process that the district will develop and maintain a rolling multi-year strategic plan with a fiscal component that anticipates what capital improvements would be necessary, how we would make investments in programming that is designed to be sustainable on years to come, and anticipate future expenditures as well as highlights for district expenses with a multi-year approach in mind. And lastly, the second indicator is to increase non-tax revenue, specifically partnering with different entities like the Mount Vernon Educational Foundation, looking at grant opportunities, how to increase our state funding through advocacy work, which we again just talked about with Lobby Day, and increasing our partnerships with both our nonprofit and our for-profit entities in the district. So those are the 3 broad goals and the various indicators of success that would let us know, and as well as our public, that we are indeed working toward accomplishing these goals that are in total alignment with the vision and mission statement. So our first goal looks specifically at student achievement, and these are some of the initiatives that are in place that are designed specifically to address the student achievement issue and reaching those targets and those indicators of success. So I will not elaborate on all of them. I've highlighted some that I'd like to talk about, beginning with our Universal Pre-K and Balanced Literacy Initiative. The Balanced Literacy Initiative, which I'll talk about before I have Dr. Gail White-Wallace talk about Universal Pre-K. Our Balanced Literacy Initiative is a research-based program that, when implemented with fidelity, has very strong evidence to support when it is done properly, students are reading on or above grade level by grade 3. We started with a small scale rollout at Edward Williams to make certain that we had the supports in place, the materials in place, and the professional development in place for our teachers and principals to roll out balanced literacy with efficacy. The data at Edward Williams is clear that our students that were part of this pilot have in fact been beneficiaries of this huge investment. We are now expanding that. That's reflected in our budget process. We've been strategic and systematic in rolling it out because there is a hefty price tag to it. So we are rolling it out in groups so that we're not doing it all at once, all across the district. And through the support of our Office of School Improvement, we've been able to secure and allocate grant funding to support that initiative as well. We also have an initiative that we've partnered with Scholastic at Mandela to make sure that we were offering our teachers a series of options as it relates to a literacy initiative and making certain that we close that gap for our students. The more we invest in our students earlier on, the more likely it is we will close those gaps around literacy and getting them on grade level. Dr. Gail White-Wallace, you want to talk more about universal pre-K?
Absolutely, Dr. Hamilton. Good, everybody. Usually the little people are bringing up the rear. So that we get to go first for once and talk about our fabulousness. So we are addressing section 1 of our superintendent and board goals. And the pre-kindergarten department has been making waves in all of our content areas. What you're seeing in front of you is a very quick synopsis of how our students fared in our beginning of the year diagnostic. Now, due to COVID, we were unable to administer this assessment in September. So you're actually seeing what students have learned in around late October, November on competencies that were taught by our teachers. So very quickly, you really want to keep your eye on that blue. That blue tells us out of 100% of our students, which our enrollment is at about 380 students right now, how many of our students are proficient in those areas in which we have covered in the first marking period? Stellar numbers, everybody, across the board. Hands clap, shimmy, and shake for the entire pre-kindergarten department. If you notice, our areas that we do need to work with students are rapid vocabulary, as well as rote counting and counting by sets. So what does that mean for a pre-K student when we're looking at this type of sophisticated data? This means that our students are meeting their benchmark over and above the percentages set forth by the board and Superintendent Dr. Hamilton. In those areas that we need additional support, we have convened as a department a small group instruction protocol for students that are at home and in school in order to work on these particular skills. We are also making sure we are focusing on wow word and specific tier 2 vocabulary to support our vocabulary instruction. I will be happy to report to the board on our progress on those subcategories that we are focusing on after the spring break. Teachers are right now starting on Monday to assess in those specific areas of focus to measure our growth and our focus in those areas. Next slide. Now, everybody's really interested about how effective is pre-K. Are we really getting the bang for our buck? Well, let me tell you here. The charts in front of you are showing the difference in achievement between those students who attended a full day pre-K and those who did not. Might I add, we did include our students with special needs in this data, and they are excelling as well at Rebecca Turner Elementary School. So hand claps for them also. So when we look at our data for our pre-K students from kindergarten to grade 1 to grade 2, you see that the students that attended full day pre-K are outperforming our students at over 30% in proficiency. So for example, in kindergarten, 54% of the students were above grade level versus 30% of the students who did not attend pre-K. It's astounding numbers. And if we collapse those numbers together, you're looking at 44% of students who did not attend pre-K being proficient versus 82% of those who did attend pre-K being proficient. I'd say our pre-kindergarten students and our pre-kindergarten department, we are producing students that are ready to learn. They are ready for kindergarten. So if you notice the data that we are also showing for grade 2, we then see a smaller margin of the achievement of these students, but we are still outperforming those students with about 20%. So in conclusion, over time, our students are still faring better over time than those students who did not attend full day pre-K. Next slide.
That's all you get, I think, Dr. White Wallace. Those were the
Okay,
two
well,
that you
So-
gave me.
There
So
was
there
one more
is-
slide.
There was another slide where we did a longitudinal study comparing our pre-K students to the cohort of students that did not attend. I will include that artifact when I send this final version to the board, most of which you have already, but we did add some more artifacts as we had more time to develop the data. I know that the board has asked for more graphs and charts as a way to illustrate, to make it more visually readable for our parent audience and community members. So that's what we've been working on. So this document has been evolving, and I shared with you over the weekend that we will continue to work over it over the weekend, and kudos to the team for being able to do that. Okay, we have some more data we're going to show you on some longitudinal data on our student progress and opportunities for growth.
Dr. Hamilton, I think we wanted a precursor to this on our professional development to showcase our
Yes.
professional development.
So as we were putting together how we wanted to chronicle our journey, because it's not just about ringing bells and blowing whistles and giving parades, rah, rah, we're doing a great job, but how are we creating systems to sustain the work that's underway and the programs that the district has made this extraordinary investment in? Schools are human resource driven organizations. So that means the investment in people is paramount to creating results that are sustainable over time. So regardless to who the principal may be in leadership or who the superintendent may be in leadership, building a culture around professional practices is vital to making certain the investment is something that the district maintains, and investing in its people, its teachers, its staff is one of the most valuable things we can do in order to make certain that these results continue. And with that, professional development has been our calling card. This is where, this is one of the things that has attracted so many other districts to look at the work we've been able to do and the investment we have made in the people resources in our organization. Dr. Gorman, you want to talk about some of the professional learning opportunities that have been in place?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Just wanted to touch on some of the changes. So, you know, when we are leading in a culture of change, and when we're talking about a culture of change, we're talking about pandemic, right, with COVID-19, transformation of technology, living with current issues such as diversity and equity. And so appropriately, we've had to adjust and change our model of delivery for professional development. And they are guided by some guiding principles, 5 guiding principles that I just want to touch on really briefly. Number 1, we try to speak current and relevant. We try to have our professional learning based in both technology roots, but when we get back together, eventually blend it with in-person processing as well. We try to keep it in digestible bites, right? It's very easy to be overwhelmed, especially in the last year. Staring at a computer for hours upon hours does nobody any good. There has to be small digestible bites, breaks, and then application. So choice matters as well, right? So giving everybody the same thing is not really responsive. So we do assessments, needs assessments, and the catalogs that you see highlighted in the newsletters are based off of teacher feedback, and they're also based on these superintendent goals. So we try to align the professional learning to meet the professional learning, the goals to meet the professional learning. Additionally, we try to, when we deliver the professional learning, we try to give them content, teachers. We try to give them time to process and make sense of things, right? So if you're just given stuff, a lot of times the stuff goes right by us. So it's very important for people to process, to make sense of how these new strategies, these new technologies, these new resources are going to help and apply. Our webinars have gained incredible accolades this year. It's not so much what happens in the webinar, it's what happens after the webinar when people process and make sense of things. Application is key. So what we learn, we want to apply to what we're teaching and delivering to students. And lastly, we want this training to be ongoing and repetitive. Everybody, adult learners like kids, arrive at learning at different times and different places. It's when those epiphanies happen and those aha moments that everyone gets to move accordingly. And that's how the change of practice is developed. So as you can see, we've created monthly newsletters for the staff. There are workshops ongoing throughout the school year for staff to continue to get up to speed on Zoom, on Nearpod, on parent workshops, on anything that is relevant to this district. And accordingly, we've received a lot of accolades for it, and we continue to provide all these opportunities for our staff. And it's important that we continue to make these offerings and continue to follow up on these offerings. There's a lot of content and a lot of digital resources and educational resources. And the last thing we want to do is, even though we're in some forms of isolation, we need to build a learning community virtually and together. And so that's the foundation of our professional development landscape. And then subsequently, we hope it equates to learning gains. Dr. Hamilton, the next set of data slides, I think, comes based off of some historical data.
So we've put together some historical data. So you could see, well, what is the impact? What impact does the budgetary allocations, the programs and services, and the investment in people, how does it trickle down and impact students? Mr. Stevenson, if you will begin, if you will talk about these graphs. So I've asked over the weekend, I asked Mr. Stevenson to put together data that would show us how are we making progress in moving students from one tier to the next over using a multi-year lens as our landscape. And this longitudinal view looks at our data from 2017 to 2021. Keep in mind this last year, I don't know what to make of it in terms of data and how we're digesting this data and how we're going to use this data, but it is data and we have to figure out where it fits in the big picture. Marlon?
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton, and hello to everyone. Thanks again for having me. So the graphs that we're going to start with are the Ela graphs. So BOI stands for beginning of the year. MOI stands for middle of the year. Like Dr. Hamilton said, we go back to 2017-2018 school year, and it comes to the most recent set of diagnostic tests that they took. Red represents students that are 2 or more grade levels below their current grade. Yellow represents students that are 1 grade level below their current grade. And green represents students that are on or above grade level. There are 3 diagnostic tests given each year, but tonight we'll be looking at the beginning of the year and the middle of the year diagnostic test results. These diagnostic tests are administered to grades 2 to grades 8. The ELA BOI, for the last 3 years, student performance on the ELA BOI have been similar for each cohort of students. But this year, we have actually seen a small increase in student achievement. The red column is usually higher than normal with the BOIs because the diagnostic is given in September when the students return from the summer break. A lot of students might experience a summer slide, which is similar to what Dr. Hamilton mentioned with the COVID slide that we anticipate they're going through right now. And it's always that high because students have not received significant instruction as of yet. So because they're just coming back from the summer, it's September, they get this baseline test, which tells us where they are coming in, and then we can track their growth over the year with the next two diagnostic tests. For the
excuse me 1 second, Marlis, just so I can jump in for a second. The iReady assessment, which the district made a commitment to in 2017, is generally within 15% predictability of how well students will do on the state assessment. So that's why we rely so much on the iReady data. In addition to that, however, one of the goals that the board adopted in 2019 really looked at our secondary level students. What kinds of assessments will we have in place that will give us the same kind of snapshot for a high school student, because the assessments are not as plentiful at the high school level as they are, for example, what you see on your screen before you. So we are currently engaged in a huge district initiative to create assessments, district-made assessments that will give us this same kind of data, not exclusively for the high school, but in addition to the high school and in addition to the iReady assessment, we will have these measures that in place that will help us identify how these students are performing when iReady is not available for them. So go ahead, Mr. Stevenson, I'm sorry.
Could you go back to that slide, please, Dr. Gorman? Thank you. For the MOI diagnostic exam, students have received half a year's worth of instruction, which is reflected in the increased student performance. For the last 3 years, student performance was in a narrow range, almost identical, but there was a slight increase in the number of students that are 2 or more grade levels below, and a decrease in the number of students 1 grade level below. The students on or above grade level remained at 36% for each year. Comparing this year's ELA, BOI, and MOI, there was a 3% increase in the students on or above grade level and a 1% increase in the students that are 2 or more grade levels below. There was a decrease in the number of students 1 grade level below, which is the yellow, as some students moved to the other performance groups, which resulted in the 1% increase in red and the 3% increase in green. For the math, for both BOI and MOI, the prior year's performance trend in a similar range respectively. In those 3 years, there was a decrease in the number of students that performed 2 or more grade levels below, increasing the number of students 1 or grade level below group. Some students also moved from 1 grade level below to on or above grade to the on or above grade level group. This year's performance broke the prior year's trend as they had an average 12 percentage points gain from BOI to MOI in students that are on or above grade level. There was only a 3% gain for this year so far. Next slide, please. These charts cover the same period that we just looked at, but this segregates the data by grades. So that when it gets past that and posted, you can take a closer look on this slide specifically just to compare the grades and the years, just to see how the students have performed going back to 2017 for each grade. Next slide, please. Next one, please.
I think that's all we get at this little snapshot.
Okay, yes.
There'll be graduation data later.
So
Okay,
one of our point in doing this, and the intent is to do this snapshot twice a year for the board, so that we will be able to say, all right, we're on target for meeting those goals, or we are not. If we are not on target for meeting those broad goals, going back to the board and superintendent's goals, then we need to rethink and retool and readjust our approach. So that means looking at programs, looking at what we've invested in, looking at PD, looking at all those things that we have anticipated will impact our progress and results reaching those targets. This is why the work has to be so focused and so uninterrupted, so that we know if it's working, continue to move in that vein. If it is not, shift gears, reinvent, reimagine, recreate, so that we can accomplish those goals. All right. On Avid. Avid is a huge investment that the district has made. How do our children do in comparison to non-Avid students? Dr. Gorman, you want to talk about grade performance and GPAs on our Avid students?
Sure. So just as a precursor, have the Avid elective classes in certain schools, right? It's primarily at the STEAM Academy, at Mount Vernon High School, as a mechanism to bridge learning to get to higher levels of learning, to get to the International Baccalaureate program, which is more rigorous. So you have to have a mechanism to get there. It also is, its foundation is in college and career readiness. So it starts to monitor how many of our kids are applying to 4-year colleges, to 2-year colleges. That's part of the senior data. And I'll show you that snapshot from 2 years back. Last year, there was sort of a pause on senior data. This year, our kids and our teachers are working to put that senior data in to get to comparative statistics from a national perspective. So one of the things that we like to do is we like to say, hey, if it's not a direct correlation, because it's very hard for one thing to equate to another independently with all the variables going on in schools and learning and family and the whole child. But one of the things that we can look at is, how are the kids at the secondary level that are in the elective, how are they doing? One of the unique things about Avid is that we try to maintain is that the kids enter an Avid elective class in 9th grade, that they stay actually with that teacher for 4 years. That's incredibly powerful, especially with all our work that we're talking about in mental wellness, social and emotional learning. Those teachers are the ones that are texting and calling and reaching the kids and say, get to school, what's going on in this class? How can I support you? How can I talk to your parents? And how can we get you to reach your maximum potential? AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. It's how do we tap that individual determination in the students that we serve? So one of the things that we were able to do is we were able to give a small breakdown from this year. How are kids that are in the elective class overall doing against other kids in our district regarding grades? So we looked at our grade point averages from marking period 1 for those kids that are in AVID compared with the ones that are not taking AVID. And you could see significantly in the last 3 years that those kids are outperforming kids that are not in the AVID class. As far as GPA, now GPA is just one measure, right? And it could be strength of schedule, it could be a number of reasons, but we said, hey, let's just take a look and see how are kids doing compared to the kids that are not in the elective class. We also looked at the 3 different schools, right? So this is where the elective is being presented at the STEAM Academy, the high school, and BTMS. We also have feeder schools that hopefully will see a vertical alignment, that the kids that are coming out of our feeder schools, primarily at Columbus, Edward Williams, Grimes, and Graham, Pennington and Hamilton, are late implementers, but they're starting to really get engaged in the process as well. How are those kids performing against the other kids? And lastly, I'll give you a couple of quick snapshots. This dashboard that you see on the left is the senior data, and this shows you how many kids are taking SATs, ACTs, applying to colleges. Who are they and how do they match up against other kids across the nation and in the district? And so this was the 2018-19 college senior data, that was our first senior class. Last year was our second senior class, and we just couldn't grab that data between March and June because of the reporting system and the pandemic. This year, we're back on target. And so we're excited in June to see how many more of our kids are seniors now that are taking AVID and what the impact will be towards college readiness, college and career readiness. Additionally, there's a little snapshot I wanted to give you that BTMS put together. They talked about the students achieving a 99.5% pass rate on marking period 2, while non-AVID students had a 69.4 pass rate. And it says the AVID students only failed 8 classes. That's pretty powerful from BTMS in middle school with pre-adolescent behavior. And so we are tracking lots of different factors in how and what the impact is on AVID. Dr. Hamilton, want to move into goal number 2?
Goal number 2 is our focused approach to addressing the whole child, the whole student, making certain that we have systems in place that help create this data platform, as well as recognizing that in addition to the academic supports, we have to ensure that we are supporting kids socially, emotionally, and providing them with ample experiences that give them the opportunity to participate in community service activities, gives them the opportunities to participate in recreation, access to sports programs, all those things that help build character and educate the whole child. So these indicators that we are now getting ready to address look at a long-term holistic approach to educating our children and understanding that some of this is stuff that is not necessarily measurable. You can't measure character, but you can look at programs and services that we are putting in place. Perhaps the standout items on here really are focused around managing for results, our Mfr process, which for those of you who are hearing it the first time is a system that I have developed and shared with our principals for monitoring student progress. It helps teachers identify where their children are by using indicators of success and where they expect them to be by the end of the year. That's benchmarking and establishing targets. And then from that target, working backwards by creating a series of strategies that help direct instructional practices to move students across that continuum. And these benchmarks gives us an opportunity to say to teachers, these are some different strategies you need to utilize. And we've created a pretty sophisticated system for helping our teachers use this. And by the way, I have to say, I never mandated MFR. I've shared it as a tool, I've shared it as an option, but I never mandated it. It has become the heartbeat of the district for teachers and principals to monitor student achievement data. All across the country, you're hearing about data, use data. You got to make data-informed decisions. But the fact of the matter is, having the data without having the tools and the resources available to you to do something with the data and develop strategies is meaningless. So we've now created systems and strategies that teachers can select from their toolkit to move students across that continuum. And that includes our data tracker. Dr. BC, if you'll talk a little bit about our data tracker that marries and mirrors our managing for results process. This ties state indicators with district indicators and helps us monitor very specific teacher behaviors and student outcomes. Dr. BC?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Unfortunately, we did not put up the chart for you to see that. But anyway, I'm going to explain to you how that works. How that works is that we looked at the data from the test scores. And I had a group of folks with me, like myself, Satish, the principal, and Marlon, and some other people on the team. And we looked at the data per building. And that's why we called the principals in. We looked at their data, we look at the classes, we look at the teachers, so that the principals can go back and have some courageous conversations with the teachers. And the teachers can have the courageous conversation with the parents and the kids. And then we will have schedule a meeting with the superintendent to talk about their data and how they use the MFR process. So that's how that whole procedure works out. And I have to say it has been very successful, because when we go into the buildings to do the DTSD reviews and we're talking to the students are saying, my Lexlag level is XYZ. I score so much in ELA and math, but my scores could be better. They are talking about how much they have, and they understand what their Lexlag score is. And the parents are also saying the same things. So it means that data is not only discussed at the central office, but it trickles down to the very students, that they can talk about their data, they can talk about what they're going to do to improve their scores. So that's where the MFR process comes in.
And there has been a deliberate effort to link all of these systems for the benefit of educating the whole child. So nothing is happening in isolation. Even the work around our All Students Must Thrive series is connected to utilizing various sources of data to inform our instructional practices and make sure that students are well, not just academically, but that we are addressing their cultural needs, we are addressing their social emotional needs through these various programs. We've also identified what we're referring to as the COVID fatigue relief kit. Did you include that in the final version, Dr. Gorman?
Yep. We could take a look at the artifacts for goal number 2, if you'd like.
So let's switch, yes, let's switch to some of our artifacts that lets us know that we are making progress toward accomplishing that 2025 goal of having an individualized plan for every student and addressing the whole child. So we've conducted grade audits. These grade audits help us to figure out where are students having the greatest opportunities for success, where are students experiencing the greatest failures in terms of grades, how they are being graded. Why is that important? It's important because it helps us determine which courses students will be eligible for the next year, and that becomes an indicator of which college and career students are able to have access to. So the alignment of all of these programs and services as we look at educating the whole child is absolutely essential, because it has a bigger picture. And it's our job as professionals to make those connections for our children, so that when they get ready to make application to college or make application to a career of their choice, they have all the prerequisites necessary. Our family and community engagement initiative is huge. We know that students are not successful with transforming without engaging families. The implementation and creation of the Office of School Improvement has been one of the most powerful initiatives we put in place in the district, because it has bridged the gap between home and schools. Now, of course, our goal this evening is to report our progress to you toward these goals. We are not painting this picture that everything is peachy keen and the work is done. There is a journey ahead of us. Believe me when I tell you, there is a journey before us. But we have put the systems in place, and the indicators of success have indicated that these systems are working, because we are moving in the right direction. Now, if we were seeing regressions, that would suggest that we need to totally retool, totally rethink our investment, and totally rethink where we put how we treat our priorities. But that's not what the data is telling us. Now, there are some patterns that are hard to explain. We had a dip in our 8th grade math scores, but what that data did not tell you is that there were students who were taking pre-algebra, algebra at that point, and they were not a part of that count. So when you put that data out, and Dr. Gorman can talk about that in greater detail, when that data is there, it gives you an opportunity to really look at what are the contributing factors as we address the whole child. Understanding our students have experienced trauma, our students have experienced significant transitions, students who were redistricted, for example, as part of our growing pains. The conversion of our schools to pre-K-8 had an impact on staff and professional development as we provided specialized instruction to make sure that our middle school students were being taught by special content area specialists. That was a cultural shift in our efforts to deliver instruction. That's part of the painting the picture for educating the whole child. Understanding also that we have students who have significant challenges because of their experience with either being homeless or having a challenge with learning English when English is not their first language, or having experiencing conditions and psychological conditions of poverty and how that impacts learning. Recognizing our role as educators to make sure we are addressing those needs as well. So,
You know, Dr. BC wanted to jump in here,
yes,
Dr. Hamilton, to talk about.
I want you to talk about the collaborative academic, social, and emotional learning endeavor.
Right, and I'm glad you're allowing me to do that, because that's a big piece of the whole child. And I will just piggyback on what you said a few minutes ago, Dr. Hamilton, that we stop building structures. We are now building systems. And that is why all these things are in place, because when we are gone, the system has to be in place that somebody else can come in and continue with our kids. And
I don't know, Jeff, if this is just my view, but this is blurry on my view. I don't know if other people have that same, okay.
It is. But I can
it
talk
is blurry. Okay.
That's Dr. Hamilton, because I know this.
Okay.
So what I want to talk about today, I know that people are talking about the mental health. They want to come in and help us with mental health and all of that. But let me tell you something. Our school district is doing a good job on addressing the mental health of our parents and mental health of our kids, as well as our staff, because we know that, especially with the pandemic, we have been affected by that. Now, we looked at the Castle Initiative. Not all schools are doing it in detail. Some of it, they're doing it in pockets. Now, what's the Castle Initiative? It's a Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning initiative. Now, in this initiative, you have at least 5 different competencies. And the 5 competencies are as follows, as you can see on your screen. You have self-awareness, social awareness, responsible decision-making, self-management, and relationship skills. Now, how do we use this in our schools? So take, for example, one of our school principal, and I'm going to say that too about Benjamin Turner, they do all 5 competencies. And how did they do it? They took the themes, assigned each themes over 2 months. An example, February and March is Social Awareness Month. And what they will do is that they have each school have a social and emotional team. And the social and emotional team gathers all the resources and the lessons that is created on the Castle website, and created a bank for the teacher who are doing advisory. And as a result of that, these activities are there that teachers can use for their kids when they're doing these initiatives. Other schools are using it differently based on the needs of their students, but at least we have something in place that is district-wide that everybody can use. And I have to tell you that a lot of our kids, a lot of our parents, and also for teachers are happy that they're using this initiative. Some people requested more training in this, which we are going to continue to do more PD in that, because as we move along, parents are now, coming forward and sharing with us what their needs are, and it's deep. I've also formed a partnership with the Department of Mental Health, and Commissioner Michael Orth is definitely working with WJCS to come in to train some of our teachers on how to be mental youth trainers in our district. We also have Just Inspire who is doing that also. So you have two entities who are training our adults how to be mental health youth trainers. And all that will trickle down into the community. I know that WJCS is also training people in the churches, and the people in the churches are working with some of our parents in the community on how to address mental health. So this is big, this is wide, this is deep, and I've received a lot of thank yous from our parents in the community that they wanted this to happen, because at least they might not trust Mary, but they will trust John, and they can go and talk to them about what their issues are. So this is how we are overcoming the mental health issues and the social and emotional learning that is taking place in our schools with our kids.
So all of this is designed to put us in a position so that by the year 2025, we will have all the pieces that we need to create an individualized plan for every student. And this process that we are engaged in now are the various pieces that will help pave the way to accomplishing that goal. This is our status report in that regard. Our current graduation data, Dr. BC, I'd like you to talk about this because I asked you to take on the Sundown program because I was not pleased with what we were getting. And I want you to be able to talk about the results after our conversation.
Yes, and I also want to thank Marlon for doing these charts because he has been working with me on these two charts, but the graduation rates and the Sundown. But I also need to talk about Sundown, because just like how Gail was high on pre-K, honestly, I'm high on Sundown. And I'm going to tell you why I'm high on Sundown. It's okay to prepare the kids from very early, and I totally support that. But sometimes we got to help those kids who make mistakes in life and want a second chance at something. And these kids have been so appreciative of their second chance that they are given that it grows more and more and more each day. We have 111 kids in the Sundown program. And some of these kids are kids who had given up on coming to school. Now they are back into the system. And if you notice on the chart, you will see 2020, you see it increases and it moves all the way up 10%, 11%, 14%, 23% of these kids from the program graduated. And that goes towards the school's GPA, graduation rate, the graduation rate of the schools. But the fact is that we are estimating in June 2021 that we're going to have 23% of our kids from that program graduate. And this is like last year we had 20 kids who graduate. The year before we have like around 15 kids who graduated. And these are kids who graduated with their diploma, and they are very, very happy because they never even think that they would do that. As a matter of fact, when Dr. Hamilton kind of gave us that challenge, I was like, really, this is tough. And then when we had that meeting at the Board of Health with our parents and they showed up with their kids, you know, the kids were like, nah, this is not going to work. I've tried it so many times. And now these kids are happy and they are sharing it with other students to come inside the program. So we also have in the Sundown program, we have kids who probably need a small amount of credit, like they need one class to graduate or one credit to graduate, and from both STEAM and from both Denzel Washington, and they will come over. They're still on their roster, but they will come over and they will take that class. So I have seen where it is so important to have Sundown. It has been a success. And I want to thank the board members for voting on that because I thought that it was, a little bit, controversial. And I want to thank them on that because I know we have tried other things and it didn't work. We have the Renaissance program, we have this, we have that, and it never worked. So they were a little bit skeptical about that. But you know what? I'm so glad that they all come together and decided that we're going to have this program. And it is working. And the Sundown kids, they have their computer, they want the work on my back. Are we going to have summer school? We need summer school. So they are demanding what they need. At one point, they were like, oh, we're done with school. And now they're demanding what they need for them to be better. And I know we're going to have a good, huge turnout this year. I mean, in June, in the graduation rate. And I do have to thank the teachers who work in that program, and Dr. Gabby Ton, who's the counselor in that program. They have been working arduously to make sure that these kids get the credits that they need to graduate. And on top of that, every one of them who graduated in June last year, they are now college bound. They are in college, taking college courses. So that's a big piece. So I have to tell you, I'm not an energetic person to say things. I just stay behind the scenes and do my work. But I'm excited about the Sundown program because our kids are going to college. And if we can save one kid from the street and they go to college, it's a lot, much more than the amount of kids that graduated all the time that is going into college. So I'm happy with that.
Awesome. And we have we anticipate, we have gone through our high school graduation, our seniors. We've looked at transcripts, we've looked at grades, and we anticipate that we will be around 83, 84% this year, which is right on target with, again, our board goals. We have to also, now I know we're taking a lot of time on this, but this is important. This is our work. This is what we should be talking about. We spend a lot of time talking about a lot of things that don't necessarily directly impact teaching and learning. This is the nitty-gritty of what we're here to do. So I appreciate your indulgence. We can't forget that teachers are also having an experience with COVID. And we have been working with, HR has done a phenomenal job with reaching out and supporting our teachers and their families who are experiencing COVID fatigue. Ms. Tiggs, will you talk a little bit about this service for our staff, please?
Good evening.
Evening.
The COVID fatigue relief kit is something that was put out by EAP, our Employment Assistance Program, to provide services to the teachers and the staff in the district to make them aware of resources that are available, right? In order for us as the staff to be there for our students, we have to be healthy and in a good space ourselves. So just recently, I began sharing out regularly, I would say, so far. It's been 2 in the past month, different emails and resources available to staff. And they did say, I don't have the exact numbers, that the outreach from our employees has improved. So to help someone else, we have to be healthy ourselves. So the COVID fatigue relief kit is for staff and their families and their students.
And this resource really is about being well. We are doing a district wellness day in April, devoted to making sure our teachers and our staff members are attending to their own social and emotional wellness so that we can be there for our children. That is a part of what educating the whole child entails. And last but not least, goal number 3, which, I want to go back to, we got some pre-K data that I want to share before we get to goal 3. So let's go back to Dr. Gail White-Wallace for a moment.
So pre-kindergarten is definitely making waves in goal number 2. What Dr. Hamilton wanted to share with you today about how we are educating the whole child are some steps that we've taken to spearhead work with social emotional learning in our pre-kindergarten department. We've actually been lauded for our work across the state and actually now across the country, as I got to present to Stedman, yes, Oprah Stedman today, in a Frog Street presentation about what we're doing with some social emotional learning. So what we started in pre-K is really beginning to talk to students about feelings. And I know people may think it's very elementary, but it begins in pre-K, understanding how you feel, how do you control those feelings, and how do you become a good citizen? With the addition of 2 amazing social workers, we have developed our own from scratch social emotional curriculum that every single pre-kindergarten student receives every single week. Students who are in virtual learning have small, we call friendship circles. We give all students counseling, informal counseling, as well as one-on-one once we have identified them. Our biggest feat, I think, is our 128 from scratch pathways manual that we created in the pre-kindergarten department. This manual, which New York State loved in our audit, helps us identify students who are high risk and will have difficulties throughout their educational career. We have created checklists, diagnostic tools, both digital and anecdotal for these students. And then we design specific pathways for each of those students to support their learning, both at home and in the classroom. Our social workers are also providing support for parents. We are also making house visits, as well as providing parents with the tools to be even better parents at home. Please visit our part on the website where you can see our monthly events that we are having for parents to help them engage with their child, be better parents, and most of all, tend to social emotional wellness in their homes. Please join us this month and for May for our Wellness Warrior sessions, as we have just started a quarterly wellness newsletter in the pre-kindergarten department. It's not just about mental, it is about physical wellness. You will check out Coach Z, our pre-K gym teacher, teaching parents about yoga, mindfulness, working out, eating right, and our social workers providing all of our families with the supports, hotlines, and information that they may need so that everybody in our department is well.
Awesomeness. So we've covered the gamut from our babies to our seniors, and that is the whole child. And lastly, our SMART planning goal, which is our district's effort to think current budget and future budget. And I have to tell you, we have so much to be thankful for. I have mentioned before, my job, I will always advocate for our district and for the needs of our district. And I think we have some unique needs. And I don't think that our state officials and lawmakers are always aware of the nuances that communities experience. That being said, we've done an extraordinary job, and I say we because it is a we. It's the board, it's the cabinet, it's the teachers, it's our principals and our parents. We've been able to rebuild this district without passing this burden on to our local taxpayer. And there have been some consequences as a result of that. For instance, our ability to raise money gets compromised because we haven't raised our taxes, for instance. Our credit rating gets compromised to some extent because of some mitigating factors around how we utilize fund balance. And I'm gonna have Mr. Silver talk about some of the district's initiatives that, one, help identify other revenue sources, and two, how we reduce some of our fiscal planning, obligations of our fiscal planning, so that we are planning smart and we're planning efficiently. Mr. Silver? You're on mute, Mr. Silver.
I've got this technology down pat, don't worry.
I'm sure you do.
So there's been a lot of talk about the CARES Act. The CARES Act in the current budget is, we're going to talk about that first, and then the CARES Act as it relates to the 21-22 budget. So first thing the state did was to take away $3.1 million called a pandemic adjustment. Then the very next thing they did was give us the CARES Act restoration. Well, you'd think that that was taking it away and giving it back, but there was some strings attached when they gave it back. They said that we now have to also provide a portion of this money, approximately $300,000, to all private and parochial school students in all areas. And we had to use this money to fund about $800,000 in COVID-related expenses, which we will see on a slide in another minute. That green and yellow is just, there's two different funding sources. And I have to thank Dr. BC for all the work she did in preparing the budgets for this. And so that we are able to get the money back that they took from us. It's not new money, but we got it back, except for about $300,000 we have to give away. And also I have to thank Amy Mazzelli for her cooperation in putting this together. Next slide, please. So if we take away the $800,000 and the $300,000, we really have $1.2 million less in money available in our state aid. And so they gave us back the money, but we've lost this. We are hoping at some point to get something from the feds to replace this about $800,000 that we have spent on COVID-related monies. But so far, we're okay. The board earlier in the year directed us to cut about $7.5 million from the budget, from our spending, and we have done that. And we'll talk about state aid in just a minute and see how that cut has now going to pay benefits going forward. Next slide. So this is how the 2021 CARES Act, the slide before this and this slide, show the way Dr. Bennett Conroy put together the budget so that the state would approve all of this $3.1 million being given back to us. And this was quite an effort because it had to include all the children who go to private and parochial schools. Next slide.
1 second, Mr. Silver.
This is now what we're looking at for 21-22. So the state aid run that we already have shows $9.5 million deducted, and then $9.5 million coming back to us. But we don't know whether the state is going to put any strings on it. If they do put strings on it for parochial and private school students, that will cost about $950,000 or 10% of the money we got back. We don't know that now. Right now, all we know is that we're even. They took
This
away
is
the
where,
money. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Ken. This is where the advocacy comes in, where conversations, my calls to Senator Bailey, my calls to Senator Biagi's office, etc. This is where it is important for us to understand the role that our various lawmakers and legislators, the role that they play. So, and each member of the cabinet plays an integral part in making this all make sense. Because if we don't advocate for ourselves, we lose opportunities to have access to these kinds of funds. So we need to have them understand why they need to vote on certain bills that are introduced. We need to have them understand the circumstances and conditions in our district that press the urgency around making sure that the district is made whole and understanding the costs that we incur as a result of COVID. So I'm on the phone constantly talking to our lawmakers to get them to understand the nuances in our district and our community so that our voice, and it's frustrating, and sometimes I feel that the efforts are in vain. But if we don't stay on, that our efforts are in vain, if we don't stay on their radar, they won't know our needs. So when parents ask, how can I help? You can help by making sure your legislators know what's on the docket, what they need to vote on and why they need to vote on it, and why Mount Vernon's needs must be addressed by fiscal, through the budget, the governor's budget proposal. I'm sorry, Ken, go ahead. I needed to say that on the slide.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Jeff, stay on the other slide before for just a minute. So I just want to say that we have traveled to Albany, been on the phone with our legislators. This week, Dr. Hamilton and I have, I think, 6 different Zoom meetings with various senators, Ways and Means Committee. We had one yesterday with Senator Mayer, as Dr. Hamilton mentioned, and we have 5 more before Friday, trying to get them just to give us what we absolutely need and what we should be getting. Okay, Jeff.
My favorite
This slide shows how we spent our $800,000 in COVID-related money. Things such as face shields, the separators for the desks, the 3-sided partitions. That was probably this, or is probably the single largest expense. And so we've just put it in percentages of what we spent, but there's, I have to thank Mr. Policio's office and Mr. Policio. They put together and have kept record of every dollar we have spent on this COVID money since last March, every dollar. And they presented this to us a number of times. And we put this, Amy Moselli put this together into this demonstration of what this all looks like. Thanks, Jeff. So, okay.
So in closing, the most important thing we can do is make certain that we are preparing our children and ensuring that they are empowered in such a way that any obstacle they may encounter, they have the tools to get through. If the mountain's too big to go over, go around. And we want to make sure that we maintain our commitment both fiscally, politically, socially, and most importantly, academically, that we may remain committed to district initiatives that we know have started to yield favorable results and great fruit for our children. So there's a harvest upon us that we have to take advantage of and continue to move in the right direction. I want to thank all of the members of Cabinet, and we'll certainly open this to any questions. I want to thank all the members of Cabinet and our principals who also helped us gather these artifacts and data. So it wasn't just a bunch of words, but artifacts that supported and provided you with evidence of our progress toward these goals.
Great. I'm so impressed with this body of work, and I think it's so hard. So I want to say, first of all, kudos to your team, to the team for pulling this together. The data, looking at the data, and sometimes a little small, and we probably will want to, do some summarizing of it, but the data is so important. I feel as a board member when I get asked questions and, people want to compare us to whatever district and where are you and what have you done? And when we see how far we've come while building the systems, right? First we had to build a structure, and then it's the systems, and then we have to let the systems have a chance to work. And it's quite an amazing layered process. It's very involved. And so I think getting the appreciation out to the community about the amount of work that needs to be done in a district of our size is just phenomenal. But I'm really happy to be able to see the data, and I think I would like to put it out to the board to ask questions. I think one of the first, and I'll ask just one question, then I'll turn it over to the other board members. But I wanted to know from Dr. BC, like, what is the secret sauce with Sundown? Because that to me is like someone saying, I'm not going to tell you my special barbecue sauce because I'm not going to tell you the recipe because you're going to copy it. But I mean, it's really quite astonishing what's been able to be accomplished there. And, while we weren't necessarily, any of us, or many of us weren't around when those students were coming through, we didn't even have the pre-K program, but coming through the earlier years in school, the ability to help them, motivate them, and encourage them to get their high school diplomas, to keep at it is huge. And it's yeah.
I'm sorry, Doris, Madam President, before BC answers that, one of the things that I want to say in response to that is resources.
Yeah.
And relationships. One of the things that I'd asked BC to do was to make sure every student was heard, that no one fell through the cracks, no one felt that they were disposable, that there was someone responsible for connecting to every child in that program on a consistent, regular basis. If it meant making the phone call, if it meant going to their house. There have been occasions that I've gone by and talked to students who have sent me emails and had challenges with their courses or couldn't get certain courses that they needed for graduation. So it's been a big part of it has been the relationships. I'm sorry, go ahead, BC. I wanted to say that at the top of your comments.
Yes, and to add to that, Trustee Miller is, or Madam President, I should say, is to put the right people on the bus. On the right bus. And I'm going to tell you why. You have to pick your staff carefully when you're dealing with students who don't want to come back, who are depressed, you have other issues. And I have to tell you, we have a great staff of teachers, administrators working with these kids. Because, I mean, and also the staff from central office who goes over there and meet with the kids, meet with the staff, be involved. You create no silos, because when the students see the superintendent coming over or us coming over from the cabinet and sitting down and talking with them, we have Brother Mohammed, we have people from the outside that comes in and meet and talk with our kids. We have the police academy that goes in there and sit and talk with them through their program. So it's a whole bunch of, as Dr. Hampton said, resources and people that really, really cares and show them that they care together, that make it work. If you don't have those folks, you can forget it. And kids know when you're lying. They know when you're faking. They know when you're not serious about what you're doing for them. And the parents, when you talk to the parents, it's like about transparency. The parents will tell you what the kids are doing, and without even the kids knowing that the parents are talking about them, or people would say ratting on them. No, but because they know that they're going to get the help from us, And again, some of those parents who have issues will say to us, I need outside help for me as a parent so that I could help the child. And we don't give them we don't give them references on a piece of paper. We pick up the phone, we call these references and said, XYZ is coming into you. Can you help this parent? So that's what we do. We do this communication, and our parent liaisons have been great. I know Alicia McDowell worked with that team as well. And she knows a lot of, from the Network Association, how they can help their parents. So it's a whole, as I said, right people in the right place who is going to wrap their arms around them, even though they are grown people and they behave like nobody, they're not going to listen to anybody. When by the time you calm them down and talk to them, you can see that, they are real teddy bears and they need love, they need help. So that's how we do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great work. Trustee McGowan, I know you had your hand up earlier. I didn't see it, but someone told me your hand was up, so I wanted to give you a chance to go first.
I did, but before I go, Trustee Saunders had some questions in the chat about sundown, so let's answer those.
Oh, okay.
How many are seniors? How many of our 111 students are seniors, BC?
I'm not sure. Most of them are though, but I'm not sure. I don't have the count, but I could provide you with that information tomorrow.
Okay.
I can break it down and give it to you.
Is there an accelerated program for students that are aging out? Yes. So we still offer Play-Doh, and we are still offering alternative scheduling for students who are of age and behind credit. We had a meeting today, as a matter of fact, on those students. All hands are on deck to make sure our students are getting what they need to get the credits and coursework to graduate on time, to get those numbers up. But more importantly, it's about using data that's available to us so we're not waiting until the 11th hour to try to remediate and educate those kids. We have indicators along the way that suggest that there are students who are not likely to complete their 4-year course of study on time. And we have to use that data better. We have to hold people more accountable for meeting with their counselees, reviewing those transcripts, and having conversations with students and teachers about students being appropriately scheduled. What about the ones that are overaging and the credit? So that's that. So did I get all of your questions, Trustee?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Great. So Trustee McOwen.
Sure, thanks. Thanks for the update, Dr. Hamilton and everybody. I know we've talked about some of these indicators since we set up the goals 18 months ago, but this is the first fully comprehensive presentation to touch every single point. So I appreciate that and look forward to future updates. I think it's worth pointing out how this is very longitudinal, as you say the word, right? This is very intentional. When we had these series of conversations as a board in 2019 in the fall, we had several different retreats talking about them, and we wanted a 5-year plan, and we were very focused on a plan that was longer than any of our board terms, and longer than, you know, some of the people that worked on this in 2019 won't be here in 2025. Maybe some of us won't be here anymore, but the point is we are very focused as a board on sustainable long-term impacts, because for so many years this city and the school district was, if you're always playing catch up, you're never catching up. You cannot address the problems of this year. You just can't. You'll never ever catch up. And if you approach education that way, you're dooming the kids to failure, because if you spend you can't spend all your time remediating, right? It doesn't work.
Exactly.
You have to build.
Yep.
And I think we've done a great job of having priorities from the very beginning, you know, from 7 years ago when we started this, of starting with pre-K, knowing that the full gains we see from investing those millions of dollars in pre-K won't be seen for several years. I know we're already seeing some of them.
Yep.
And it's very positive, and I appreciate Dr. White-Wallace and her work, but really it's going to be 10 years before we really understand the impact we're having now, 12, 15 years. But I just want to say kudos to all, and it's been very rewarding, I have to say, as a board member, to work with Dr. Hamilton and the staff that shares that we didn't have to convince anybody of anything, that as a board and administration from the very beginning, we understand this is a long-term thing, and it's got to survive any of us trustees on the board. It's got to survive Dr. Hamilton when he retires 40 years from now. All of us. So I really think that the goals are aligned with that, and I appreciate seeing the results, looking at it that way, because that's how we all as a city and community have to look at it for this to work. So anyway, Mike, I have questions about the iReady data. So I don't know if that's Mr. Stevenson or you, Dr. Hamilton, but I have a specific question and then a kind of a broader question. My specific question is for this year's data, the 20 and 21 school year data, is that data including only students who completed the iReady exam, or is that including students who never took it at all? The data shows a 0 for kids who didn't log in, who didn't take it, didn't participate.
That just reflects students who completed the assessment within the window.
Okay. I imagine you don't have the numbers at your fingertips, but I'd be very interested to see the breakdown of in-person versus full-time remote.
Dr. Baubles, do you know that offhand? I know you looked at it, but I don't know if you would know it offhand.
I do not, Dr. Hamilton, but we could certainly pull that together.
Okay.
And share it out.
Awesome.
Yeah, and my more general question is, it seems to me, I mean, I'm just going to be blunt. I'm not impressed with the iReady numbers and the trend over the last 3 years. It seems very static to me. Hasn't really gone up or down very much. It seems within the margin of error for the last 3 years. And I'm just a little confused at that because I know we have other indicators. Our test scores have gone up. Clearly, our graduation rates have gone up. There's been other indicators that have gone up over the last 3 or 4 years. So why is the iReady data all seem flat to me and the other indicators are going up? What does that tell us?
Well, one of the things, and I'll give Dr. Baubles an opportunity to respond to that as well. One of the things, particularly with this year's assessment, is, and I think I prefaced this a meeting, maybe 2 meetings ago, that I don't know how reliable it is because of the environment that we're in right now. So while we can measure attendance, we can't measure engagement. So the reliability that iReady heretofore has provided, I have some concerns about. In terms of other measures and other indicators of success, one of the things that we are challenged by as a community with a very high transient rate is making certain that when we look at first grade to second grade progress or second grade to third grade progress, are we looking at the same students? So sometimes that static data does not necessarily measure or compare the same student from one period to the next, because we have such large transient population, which is another reason why we have started moving with jet-like speed on creating district-made assessments, because it'll give us a better opportunity to assess more frequently and in closer intervals rather than beginning of the year and end of the year. Dr. Baubles, you want to add to that?
Certainly, Dr. Hamilton, thank you for the opportunity to do so. Just as Dr. Hamilton mentioned, what I can share in terms of common assessment development and design is something I was recently a part of with our humanities department chairs for our 3 high schools. Over a series of meetings in the last month, essentially for our ELA, our English Language Arts, and Social Studies courses for grades 9 through 12 students, our department chairs have embarked upon quite a bit of leadership in terms of really working with their individual faculty members and as groups to be able to develop these assessments to be administered across these particular courses that are taught at all 3 high schools. So rather than just relying upon the assessments that are a part of the programs that we've purchased, we're looking to extend the utility of those by complementing these common assessments with those additional metrics. So just as iReady is one point to look at in terms of data, I think the more data we can collect, the better. One of I think the very many astute points that Dr. Hamilton had made at our last board meeting together was that value of the baseline data that NICEAD will provide ultimately when we administer to our students this spring or over the course of the summer or the fall, depending upon how that takes shape. So iReady is one measure, right? It's not to be completely relied upon singularly. And I think it's something for us to keep a watchful eye on in terms of how truly reliable it is once we are back more so in a traditional in-person classroom setting.
And one last thing on your point, Trustee McOwen, the iReady data bands students, puts students in certain bands or clusters. So the movement is actually greater than it looks like on the bar graph because it moves students from above grade level, below grade level, one or two levels above, on, below, or 1 or 2 years below grade level. So within those 4 bands, you could have a significant movement, and it shows the more students that are on grade level is a more impressive bar than the 2 bars that are below on those charts, meaning on or below, 1 or 2 years below, because it is very challenging to move those students that are 1 or 2 years below grade level to the bar on the other end. So while the bars look static, the movement within those 4 bars is really quite significant, because the effort to move 2 years below to being on grade level, for example, is quite significant.
Yeah, I mean, that's always going to be the case. I'm just reacting to the data as it's presented, and it doesn't really tell me much. If I'm looking at the iReady data for the last 3 years, I don't know what I'm supposed to glean from these charts, given that they seem to be fairly flat to me. That's all. That's my point.
Understood.
But I know there's other metrics that trending upwards, at least according to the graphs I saw tonight, that's not trending anywhere. So I'm trying to interpret that data. For example, I thought it was, I didn't have a chance to look at it carefully. I'll look at it more closely when we get to actual slides. But when you had the iReady data broken down by each grade, like one at a time, right? You could see the gaps, you know, start to grow as kids get older, which makes sense. Like, I understand why that happens over time. Because the longer you go below grade level, the harder it is to catch up, obviously. So I understand that trend, and that was a more interesting graph to me. I'm not reacting really positively or negatively. I'm just trying to understand the
I understand. Probably the hardest work before us right now, honestly, is when we look at our students who had the full pre-K experience, that cohort of students that we had 4 years ago, making certain that as students come through our pre-K and K experience and enter first and second, that our curriculum is spiraling in such a way that teachers are not reteaching skills that those pre-K and K teachers have already covered, because kids are being more advanced now. And that is why the curriculum work is so important, and vertical articulation is so important. So teachers can readily receive these students who are coming in already knowing their sight words, already knowing numeration, already knowing phonemic awareness to some extent. So the curriculum work that we have to do simultaneously now is about ramping that work up and ensuring that that vertical articulation happens. So I know you got it in advance. So hopefully the charts that were not as viewable in the PowerPoint, the hard copies you have, hopefully you can see them better.
Yep.
Madam President, I see Madam Trustee Munoz-Patterson.
Munoz-Patterson, yes, ma'am.
Hey, so I just have a quick, okay, so as a side note, my daughter is in the pre-K 4 at Friendship for Tots, and I cannot tell you, like, she came home the other day, she sat down next to me, she goes, "You're gonna teach me how to read." And I was like, "I don't like your threatening tone of voice, young lady." But she was like, so like, "This is what we're doing today." Like, she came home like sight word, like she's really like, it's a little scary. But anyway, so that's a whole other situation. But so in terms of, I love the bigger picture. I love seeing where we are. I guess my only concern is, where are we in reference to, or what rollback do we expect in terms of COVID? Like, because I feel like this year I feel like we're expecting that there's gonna be, bless you. We're expecting there's gonna be, sorry, I have the 4-year-old sitting at my feet. We're expecting there's gonna be some kind of regression. Like, I mean, there has to be a regression, right? Are we expecting? I guess I want everyone to be prepared. Like, what are we expecting? So that way nobody looks at it and goes,
you know what? That's a great question. And I don't know. I really don't know.
That's not the answer I was looking for.
I do know that we have to really reinvent summer school. We have to really reinvent our Saturday program and our academies that are designed for mediation. I'm expecting the governor is going to be putting forward a huge initiative around summer school that may mirror, frankly, year-round schooling. I'm expecting something like that may very well come forward. But I don't, Trustee, I really don't know. I don't know if we should say kids are going to lose a whole year, or we should expect a 6-month regression, or I don't know. And I don't know if we're going to see it all this year. it may be next year before we really see what that regression looks like in terms of getting kids back in a traditional environment and get assessment data that helps us really benchmark it.
Yeah, I just think as a parent, and again, I don't know if all the parents are feeling the same anxiety I'm feeling, but like, I just keep, every time something else comes up, I'm like, oh, and you know, God forbid something comes in where, you know, my son has something and he gets like a 40% on something just because he wasn't paying attention. And I'm like, oh my God, you got a 40. And he's like, yeah, but I just wasn't doing whatever. And I'm like, you're not allowed to get 40, you know, like, because I automatically, it sends me into like this total tailspin of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Am I going to have to like, I don't know, start sending him to Saturday school or whatever it is? I just don't, and I know everyone's having the same, I assume, at least from the parents I'm talking to, are having a lot of the same feelings. So
yeah, I think I'm having those feelings too. I don't know. It's even hard to think about how to plan because we don't really know what we're going to experience or, but what I do know is that I think we have to anticipate education is going to look differently. I think our calendar may start to look different. I think our school day may start to look different. I think we have to really be creative and anticipate that we're going to have a lot of work to do.
Dr. Hamilton, do you think this, you mentioned it, but do you think this could be a launching pad or a platform on which districts can transition to something closer to a full year?
I do. I think I'm on a task force with the commissioner. I have been, and I hope I don't get assassinated for this, but I've been an advocate for year-round schooling for a long time. I've studied year-round schooling, and I think there is tremendous benefit to year-round, aside from COVID, I think there's tremendous benefit to year-round schooling, but it's a dramatic shift. Parents, people have to learn to plan their lives differently. So I think if we even approach that, having that conversation with our unions, of course, our parent community, and looking at how we could gradually address that. But I think this is a unique opportunity to really do things differently.
Yeah, I'm already on record as being a supporter of that, so it's no surprise. But yeah, I know I appreciate that, and lots of changes are going to happen regardless. So we'll see.
Yes.
Well, and that doesn't, and the year-round school doesn't necessarily just address regression. It can address acceleration. So for the students who want to go quickly and who are, maxing out on AP courses, et cetera. I'm looking at one of our students right now. It's a great opportunity. I mean, I know students are taking college courses for college credit now within our high school, which is great. But I think it offers opportunities all across the board.
Yes. Students can finish their high school experience in 3 years instead of 4, with that kind of schedule.
And then if they take enough college courses, they can finish their college faster too.
Right.
And more economically. Do any other trustees have any comments they would like to make? No? Okay.
All right. One last item, Madam President, under the superintendent's report, and that's our efforts to reinvent our new standard for in-person learning. And we're rebranding this because our schools are open. So we're calling it New Standards and Guidance to Inform In-Person Learning. And what are we doing to welcome more of our students back because our schools are open? So this is a very brief presentation. There was a committee that worked together that was comprised of union representation from both teachers and administrators group, as well as the superintendent's cabinet. Dr. Gorman was my designee on this. I intentionally did not share my work with the superintendent's group because I wanted the work to be organic and I wanted to fuse the idea. So I'm on a committee with area superintendents and I wanted to see how much our work was aligned and they were very much aligned with one exception, and that is around the schedule for reopening. The committee made a recommendation that really expedites reopening school, which I support. I had a longer, more elongated schedule in mind, but other than that, the recommendations I'm effectively accepting and recommending to the board in their totality. Dr. Gorman?
Dr. Hamilton, I put the why on the first slide on purpose because I think that sometimes with everything that we're dealing with 24/7 over the last year, and you know, it's been a year, it's been a solid year coming up this week when you close schools, you know, and I actually have a flashback slide from that in this presentation quickly, but the why continues to resonate with our work. And I think the why was properly explained in the last presentation. It's about the children. Adults are a close second, but our business is children, right? And getting those children in our schools to face-to-face learning, we know is important. And the absence of them while they're on computers is part of it. But I think our goal and the why we're trying to reopen and get kids back to in-person learning on a regular basis really drives our decisions and, you know, takes into consideration all the other factors, and there's so many of them. But why are we after getting back into school? And that's really the question that has to be answered as we do this work. So having said that, the committee came up with 3 basic phases to continue to push more students back into our schools. I mean, we're reopened, but now we want to make almost like a public cry, get into the schools as fast as you can. So on March 22nd, our new phase 1 will include pre-K to second graders and our graduating seniors. We want our seniors into school. It's their last year of school before they go out to college or career. And it's important that they're with us and we can celebrate their accolades and make sure that they graduate on time. Our phase 2 recommendations is for right after our spring break. So the 22nd is the week before spring break. And like we've done in the past, that's sort of like work out the kinks with the first group, see how it goes, prepare and do some more work if we have to over the break, and then bring in our next group, which is the 3 through 8, and then our phase 3 the following week on grade 9 to 11. While our remote learning is reduced, it is still available for those who require these accommodations. Our eventual goal is to get to the point where our kids are coming back fully face-to-face. So this is based off of CDC essential elements of safe schools. Regardless of the level of community transmission, we are using the 5 key mitigation strategies essential to the safe delivery of in-person instruction. Masks, physical distancing, hand washing, respiratory etiquette, cleaning, and contact tracing. And so why now? What's changed since our first phase in? Well, there's a number of things, and putting it all together, this seems like a good time to make that second push. High fidelity routines are in place, right? So people are, you know, in the beginning, filling out a questionnaire or taking temperature was a major task. Now it's a regular routine wherever you go. You know, a doctor's office, a grocery store, masks are essential, routines are essential, questionnaires to be filled out, taking temperatures and monitoring. We are embarking on diagnostic COVID testing in lieu of random testing. We are looking to conduct testing in our school and offer referrals to diagnostic testing. Diagnostic testing, defined by the CDC, is any student, teacher, or staff member who exhibits symptoms of COVID-19 at school. So the testing, we believe, is an important component that we didn't have in place before. Spring brings fresh air, right? Open the classroom windows and get the air moving. Get the kids out if you can, when possible. And we have a lot of space in some buildings, not as much space in other buildings, but let's get the kids outside and together in the fresh air. Partitions and shields are in place. We have ordered for all students in the district. That is a different prototype that is sort of ramping it up. And more staff and community members daily are becoming vaccinated. So we're getting a better better grip on things. And while this is far from over, the pandemic, and that's why we're putting the online option still in place, in the end, it's still parents' choice at this point for this school year. We do encourage them to get back. We of course are continuing our cleaning and disinfecting practices. This is a slide that I flashed back to last year in March 5th. We did this presentation for the board, Dr. Hamilton, and we broke out the Clorox 360 machines and the mitigation strategies that we are doing. That was a year ago, and in a lot of ways that was very front forward thinking, because we were right spot on in how we were starting our mitigation strategies. And you can see that I just took this slide and just changed the title, but it is one of the slides from our reopening presentation from last early May, I believe.
I don't know if you got, how many of you were able to watch the panel discussion last week, where we had the county doctors on and our environmental specialists. It was a the feedback I got from that has just been extraordinary. Even people who don't work in the district were on because the county shared the information as well. And we got some really good information. One of the things that I wanted to know was specifically around the use of barriers. I knew what I was reading. I knew what the CDC was saying. I knew what colleagues were saying, but I wanted our environmental specialist to be able to share with me, is that a sound barrier, an appropriate barrier in the classroom to help mitigate the spread of COVID and to make sure that the quality of the air does not get compromised by doing so. So he has come on site and conducted studies and confirmed that. We have confirmed that the guidance is clear. It's 6 feet or a protective divider. Now, we have already made provisions for up to 50% of our students, and we have not hit those numbers. So I don't think there's anything that we really need to do drastically on our part right now to get students back in school. We want parents to know that the CDC and all the medical experts are clear. Schools are the safest place for kids to be right now. There are no cases or very minimal cases documented across the country of infection happening in schools. Kids have come to school where they have been infected from other events, family events, social gatherings, things of that sort. In Mount Vernon, we have no documented cases. There's one potential case that could have happened in school, but there's no evidence that it actually did. It's just people who tested positive believe that they got it from someone else, but the circumstances which they describe makes it it refutes all the evidence. But nonetheless, just to err on the side of caution, we really have no evidence that school is a place where the virus is spreading. Now, I will say this, we are opening our doors and encouraging parents to send students back, and parents want some kind of guarantee that their kids will not get COVID. I can't give you that guarantee, and I'm not gonna misrepresent. I can't guarantee you that unless you can guarantee me you won't send kids to school with COVID. If every parent and every employee guaranteed me they wouldn't come to school with COVID, I could guarantee you wouldn't catch COVID in school. But it's a dynamic disease that parents can't guarantee that, staff can't guarantee that, and I can't guarantee that. But what I can tell you is that we will use all available guidance, appropriate PPE, social distancing to mitigate anything associated with the transmission of COVID-19 in our classrooms.
So to wrap things up, one of the things that we talked about was the importance of maintaining the Wellness Wednesdays for this year, not next year. And I'll give you a quick slide on what our goal is. This is sort of like a preview. This is like a ramp up, get ready for fall 2021 as we look at the next 3.5 months of school. So The structure will be a little bit different on the Wednesdays. Teachers will actually, and principals will work to schedule individual time with students for part of the day, as well as using other parts of the day to continue the professional learning opportunities. Without face-to-face regularly, those, you can't call out for a sub to go to a workshop because the kids are virtual, right? So how do you get that professional learning in? So that paradigm has shifted. We want to maintain the connections for Wellness Wednesdays for the children and continue professional learning opportunities. Lastly, as we head into the spring, imagining the fall, we want to share that we are actively planning to have all students back in our schools 5 days a week next year. In order to accomplish this goal, we are encouraging all students to come back to school during our spring. Increasing in-person learning plan is a means to effectively transition back to full-time face-to-face learning. We are committed to closing the achievement gap and meeting the needs of all of our students, which goes back to the initial, why are we trying to continue to move kids and get them back into some type of normal and learning environment.
Now, there are some folks who think we shouldn't open until September, and some folks thinking we shouldn't open until everybody is vaccinated. We are moving forward with bringing students back in for full-time face-to-face instruction so that we can get our students back to some degree of normalcy and help us define what our new normalcy will be in the months and years ahead of us. So this is our plan. We've already started with the petitions. Fortunately, that panel discussion garnered support from the county. They will help us offset the cost of some of those petitions that we've purchased for our students. We have enough petitions already for our phase 1 students. The second order will be going in to prepare for our second round of in-person students. So by the time we get to phase 3, we will have petitions in every single classroom. We're starting with our 12th graders at the secondary level for the reasons Dr. Gorman mentioned, but it also gives us a cohort of students to look at what does transitioning in the hallways look like when we bring all students back. What adjustments do we need to make for supervision to make certain that students are social distancing? And also, how do we take full advantage of the COVID testing so that our seniors can have their full senior year experience? There is no vaccination approved yet for students, for children. We don't anticipate that will be available until the latter part of this year. I understand there's a vaccination that will be available for students from 15 to 17. And then the early part of next year, I understand they're on target to approve a vaccination for kids from 5 to 12 for those who may want to do that. But we'll have more information. There'll be more data available about how people are responding to the current vaccine. So this may be an entirely different conversation the more we are accustomed to the vaccination being available and distributed.
So when is the plan to phase out the remote?
The remote instruction will be phased out completely in September, when we come back in September. Right now, I think there will still be occasions where we will need to quarantine. I think there will still be people who are traveling, who are not vaccinated, who will be infected and be exposed to the virus in other environments and will need to quarantine. So I think we need to continue to offer remote learning for that purpose. But in September, it is my expectation that there will be no remote options. Now, things could change, data could change, information could change, but right now the plan is not to offer remote instruction in September.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or comments regarding?
Oh, and one
President
other thing
White.
too, I just got a reminder, I'm sorry, Madam President, summer school will be in person this year. So our plan for summer school is to ramp up the number of students who are eligible and to offer that as an in-person option. We are looking at outdoor instructional space as well for the summer, even as we head into the spring, but certainly for the summer, looking at outdoor instructional space as a way to entice, encourage students to come back in a safe way.
Okay, great. Trustee White?
Yes, Dr. Hamilton, you said that the social distancing won't be affected if they have the petitions around? Because I know some of our classroom can't hold but maybe 18 or 20 students. And they cannot be 6 feet apart at that with so many kids.
That is correct. So the guidance says that if you use partitions, you don't have to have 6 feet. And there's debate about 3 feet versus 6 feet without barriers.
Right.
I'm not comfortable with doing that right now, quite frankly. So I would not suggest removing barriers and going to 3 feet, although there are some districts that have done that. I think we should err on the side of caution and use barriers and recognize that as our mitigating factor in the classroom, particularly where the classrooms are small, as you noted, Trustee.
Okay.
Can I piggyback on that question?
Absolutely.
The partitions will be provided by the district
Yes, ma'am.
and they will remain in the school.
Great question. Thank you for asking that. I forgot to mention that. Yes, the petitions will remain in school. They will be cleaned in school and disinfected at the end of each day when the classrooms are cleaned. Students will not be permitted to take them home. Madam President.
Trustee Mitchell?
Hey, so I guess as a parent that has my children are remote learning, and I think it was important that you stated it's not going to be phased out to September, because the first thing, of course, we're going to think as parents is we're going to think, oh my God, they're phasing it out by April and something like that. So 2 things. You're talking about by basically, I guess you said, I think your schedule called for by the end of April, we should be pretty much back in full swing, right?
Correct.
Now, last I checked, and if I am talking out of place here, let me know, our classrooms are already a good extent at capacity with just the amount of kids that are in there without social distancing. How do we explain to our parents how we're going to still maintain social distancing according to CDC standards and guidelines, while we still have classrooms that are already at capacity without social distancing? That's my first question.
So there are very few classes at capacity, and most even though our survey data suggested that we would be at 50% capacity, most of our classrooms are not at 50% capacity, which is how the spacing, the social distancing at 6 feet, how that was mapped out in each classroom. The 6 feet will not be honored because in lieu of 6 feet, we will be using partitions. Now, in instances where we just hit that 50% mark, for instance, in terms of those parents who said they would send their kids back, we would actually still be able to maintain 6 feet in those classrooms because they have been configured based on 50% capacity. If we exceed that 50% capacity, then we will still be okay because we'll have barriers. But if we don't, we're actually exceeding the standard because we will have 6 feet and barriers in the classrooms.
So will masks still remain mandatory, or did I miss
Absolutely.
that? Okay. So
I'm
masks
sorry
will
for
remain-
cutting you off, but I should have said that earlier. Masks will absolutely still be required.
Okay. I think pretty much that was the first thing that jumped out at me that I wanted to get clarity on.
Okay.
Okay, Trustee White?
But will children be allowed to play outside since
Yes.
it's the springtime? And lunch period, will it be
the lunch will still be brought to them, or will they be going to the lunchroom?
So we talked about that with principals today. It will depend on their capacity. So principals have the option, if they have the space to put students in the cafeteria on individualized desks like some of the schools have, they can do that and have the social distancing guidance in place. There will be some schools based on their enrollment that will have enough partitions that they could put in the cafeterias as well. So that's an option. And then lastly, they could continue to serve lunch in the classroom for those students. So we really did give principals the autonomy based on their building configuration and their numbers to provide lunch, breakfast and lunch, as they deem most appropriate within those guidelines.
Because I think kids are missing out on a lot of socialization because of this. So if they're allowed to go out in the playground with their mask on and socialize with their friends, I think that's a good idea.
We actually had students go out today. It was the nicest day we've had so far. So there were a couple of principals who emailed me and said, is it all right if I let kids out if they keep their masks on? And I told them absolutely, they could do so.
Okay.
All right.
I have one question. I'm a little confused over the petitions. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So the elementary school, the children are in the class all day, they're in the same classroom. But when you get to the high school, how would that petition work if you have students going to different classes between periods? Will someone clean the petitions in between periods, or how does that work?
We actually talked about that. Dr. Gorman, you want to share what the committee recommended on that? That did come up as one of our questions as well, and the committee addressed that. Go ahead, Dr. Gorman, I won't steal your thunder.
We're talking specifically about partitions?
Yes.
High school
at the secondary level.
Students, actually, we talked about high school students, and Michael could add in on this as well. The use of wipes and having kids using wipes in the beginning that was not an approved practice. Now it is, and it's okay that kids, when they leave, they take a wipe and they wipe their partition down. So the last thing we want is them carrying it with them on their own.
So the students will wipe their petitions?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Madam President, my trustee McGowan's had his hand up a few times.
Thank you. Okay, more questions about the partitions. Who ordered the partitions? Who made the decision of what kind of partitions to get? Are we getting the same partitions for kindergartners as high schoolers? There's a lot of questions around these, right? Because I've seen some of them look phenomenal. Some of them look like prisons. The poor kids can't even see out of them. So has anybody pretended to be a 5-year-old and sat down behind one of these partitions and it actually works okay?
I'll resist that. There was a real good punchline there that I'm going to pass up on. Mr. Policio, you wanna take that question since you ordered them?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hamilton, for the opportunity. So the petitions are the same for all grade levels. They are polycarbonate. They're approved. Our environmental expert actually sat with me behind partitions in homeschool, and we measured carbon dioxide transmissions on how breathing would be, if they would have enough oxygen coming from above and around them. So all those were within standards, and we did not put a 5-year-old behind them, that's for sure. But so I believe that it's a standard piece of equipment that is used across the United States at this point. It has a fire rating because it is polycarbonate. They do not allow plexiglass. So we are within standards of what we purchased.
And what about, my main concern is auditory, can the kids hear behind the partitions, the teachers talking when they're 25 feet away from them?
I mean, there's challenges to masks and anything you put in front of anybody who's talking. So that's going to be a challenge, but I believe that the district will address it accordingly.
Now, are we going to sorry, go ahead, Dr. Hamilton.
I think to your point, I think it would be misleading to tell parents that that's not going to be an issue. When you have a mask and a barrier, teachers are going to have to project. Students are going to have a challenge with asking questions. I'm thinking about the student that may be a little timid and may not have a loud voice and may not project as much as another. So teachers are going to need to be comfortable with moving around the classroom to be in proximity to some of those students. But that is something that we've thought about, and it is something that we think our teachers will have to be able to adjust to once our students are in person.
Are we going to just put in all the barriers on the scheduled deadline, when we're scheduled to everybody back in right away? Or are we going to wait and see? I mean, because if only 50% of the kids are showing up anyway, then why put the barriers in? If we don't need them and we're already socially distanced.
So we have some petitions that are in all the classrooms anyway. If you remember when we had our reopening plan, we made sure that there were petitions in every classroom because we anticipated there would be students who were still having a difficult time with adjusting and getting accustomed to wearing the mask all the time. So classrooms already had them. Our goal is to have a petition for every student. And I hear your point, what if we don't need them? I think we will always need them. I think that it will add a degree of confidence for our parents if we have them available. I think the worst thing we can do is have a need for them and not be able to acquire them because they're back ordered, because everybody in the nation's ordering them right now. And we want to make sure that our supply meets our demand.
Trustee Patterson. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I have a couple more questions. Can we, obviously we've done lots of environmental testing about theoretical air quality, that it will theoretically not be diminished, right? And we can keep track of that. What is the plan once the kids are actually back in the building? What's our follow-up monitoring going to look like to make sure that what we projected is not going to be an air quality issue? We're right, that it's not an air quality issue after the kids are all back.
Dr. Lynch has actually proposed that he come in and do random tests once students are present in the classroom, that we measure that with cross ventilation, opening windows. He actually advised against opening the classroom door. We thought that would be a smart thing to do. He actually advised against that. So he will serve as he will continue to serve on a consultancy basis to monitor air quality as students come back in and as classroom populations increase in size.
Yeah, I'm specifically concerned about the places in our district that don't have windows that can open, right? There are
Yes.
some where that can't happen.
And you're absolutely right. There are some small group classrooms that don't have windows where they do pull out instruction. Dr. Lynch is and we expect, and he has proposed that he will come in and test the air quality in environments like that.
All right, last question for now is, do we have an estimate of what percentage of our staff is vaccinated?
We put out a survey, and the governor he said that we needed to gather this information, and then we were advised that that was a HIPAA violation and we could not ask people that question. So based on the data we have, we only had, what was it, Joe? 700 people responded and 238 had the vaccine.
So between, between the people that had it or had an appointment to get one, it was a little bit more than half the people that responded.
As of when?
About 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
I do just have to put a plug in there for we remind everybody, we do have a special accommodation right from the state. The facility in Yonkers is open only for residents of Yonkers and Mount Vernon to go get vaccinated. I've been tracking it. The wait times it's relatively easy to get an appointment, easier than it is in other facilities. And once you're actually there, the process is very fast. So I just personally encourage people to, as soon as they're eligible, to go get that taken care of. And we have that's a special thing that's happening in Mount Vernon that not all towns have access to.
It's true. Trustee Patterson, you had a question.
Yeah, I just, in terms of the partitions and, so my son's classroom has extra partitions in addition to the ones that the district had because we bought extra ones because we were concerned. So a few of the parents bought extra ones. And I asked his teacher how she feels about how she can hear and if the kids can hear. And the first thing I said is, do you have issues hearing the kids or do the kids have issues hearing you? And the first thing she asked is whether my son asked if he told me that she's always asking them to repeat themselves. So clearly there are definitely issues with hearing, but it's partially the mask and the partition and her mask. And she's stuck in front of the classroom on a computer and the kid could be all the way at the back of the room behind a partition with a mask as well. So just in terms of, again, expectations, like I will say in terms of our expectations, it did make me feel more comfortable that I knew that we had more partitions. So I felt a little more comfortable sending him in the beginning. But yeah, so clearly enunciation and you know, speaking is an issue.
Okay.
Trustee Turnquest Jones.
I think Jeff Red also had his.
Oh, okay.
Jeff Red, you had your hand up?
I did. I wanted to ask Dr. Hamilton, they have not made it mandatory for teachers to get vaccinations yet?
They have not. And they probably won't.
Why do you say that?
Because there's been some considerable debate about whether or not it was permissible by law to mandate teachers to be vaccinated. Then there was some talk about whether or not that would be a part of, once it became available, a part of required inoculations for students to get to register for school. So there is a legal debate on that question right now, but so far we cannot mandate it. We thought we could in the beginning, but we cannot.
Okay, thank you.
The question I have is in regards to the auditoriums and the gymnasiums. How is that going to look? Thank you.
The gymnasiums, we are currently using them, and we've been able to do so successfully as we increase enrollment with our in-person students. I'm expecting more of those classes will be conducted outside. I do not anticipate that auditoriums will be used right now for large gatherings. There is still a limit of a maximum of 200 people in any social gathering. So pulling together students in the auditorium for an assembly, based on the way I interpret the law, would be a social gathering. So because we would exceed that, if we tried to do something of that nature, it would not be covered by the current provisions. If principals needed to pull together small groups in auditoriums and where they could spread them out with their masks, that would be appropriate, that would be fine. But larger than 200 people, we would not be able to do right now.
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to Mike. Mike, let me see. Have we made certain that all schools' windows will open?
So
Or
to the
can open?
Thank you, trustee. So to the extent that we're aware of any issue with a particular window or a group of windows, we have a registered vendor, Window Repair Systems, that has a proprietary balance system that works really well. So if I know about it, it will operate.
Thank you.
I'm asking for assistance from both the custodial staff and the building administration, and it's been working well with Dr. Hamilton's guidance.
I know you had it covered.
Okay.
Can I ask this one quick question? One last thing, really fast, and it's to Mike. Regarding opening windows and closed doors, for a fact, if you open a window and you don't open up another one and the door is closed, the air really does not circulate. It just blows right past the door or window and it doesn't come in. So we're either going to talk about opening the top and bottom of window, or we're going to have to open up more than one so that there can actually be ventilation. If it were a closed door, the air is never going to come in This doesn't do anything. So what it's gonna be?
So his rationale, I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
So we do have to be a little careful with fire regulations as far as classroom doors. There's code that classroom doors are to remain closed. There might be some potential waiver in the COVID world, but for the most part, classroom doors remain closed. We will open the windows, and we have, you know, an amazing filtration system on all of our rooftop and air handling units with high density filters. So I think we'll be able to achieve the air quality that everybody's looking for. And with Dr. Lynch's help, we'll be able to ventilate the classrooms appropriately.
And one last thing, Dr. Lynch's point on the classroom doors being open is if there is a case of infection, it expands the opportunity for exposure because it can be airborne. If it's in the classroom across the hall and somebody is infected there and the door is open, the potential for it to blow across the hall into another classroom expands the potential exposure. So that was his rationale for not opening doors, which I thought, like you, it made sense to open the door so we get some air movement.
Okay, I'm doing an Elmo on all of us.
All right, very well. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Woo! Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, and
I think-
again, my apologies, it was so long tonight.
That's all right. I mean, it was just very important information we need to know. I want the community to know that we are creating, relative to the first presentation, that we are creating systems and tracking measures, and we are making progress. It's too slow for a lot of people, but it's steady. And this is the thing where, to what Trustee McOwen said, you know, slow and steady will win the race here. We can't change things overnight. So the important thing is that we do it correctly and we do it sustainably. So last comment on the reopening plan, everyone just needs to understand that nothing's going to be perfect, and everything has changed, and it will remain changed for quite some time. So we just have to, I'm very impressed with what we've done from the very beginning. I mean, from the first months of the virus, in terms of sanitizing and managing, you know, adhering to protocols, CDC protocols. And I think, you know, we've gotten better at it. I also think that it's a tremendous amount for our teachers and principals, administrative staff to have to monitor. It's just so many additional things while you're trying to teach. But the fact that we really have not had school transmission is a huge testament to both what the experts are saying about it's safer for the children to be in schools, and also to our adherence to the CDC guidelines. So kudos to the team for doing that. All right. I don't know if anyone has a committee report, and if you do, if anyone will listen to you, but I'm really happy. But I'm really happy to put out there. I do want to first ask Trustee Forson if she has any comments she'd like to make, since there's a lot that pertains to her school experience, which is certainly her senior year is coming to an end. So would you like to make any comment, Trustee Forson?
Yeah, those are actually going to be my questions. So two main things. Number one, as you said, it's our senior year, it's March, and we're all wondering about senior activities like prom and graduation and senior trip. And it's still a pandemic, yeah, but is there any way any of that could happen? Because we're really nearing June and we're all kind of jittery and hoping something's going to happen to, you know, raise morale.
Yeah, so I met with the high school principals to talk about what the senior experience would be like. My directive was that they all, if what one did, they all had to do. They didn't have to do the same activity, but if they were going to have a prom, then everybody was going to have a prom. If they were going to have in-person graduation, everybody had to have in-person graduation. So right now, as it stands, we are planning for in-person graduations. We are open to senior trips, providing the trips are going to ensure social distancing and that they're to places that will also recognize social distancing. And we are also open to proms, providing venues are cleared to offer proms. So as far as the school end is concerned, and I did get a question about whether or not I was open to having prom on site if venues could not host, and I'm certainly open to that. I would gladly entertain a recommendation to have on-site prom if the traditional outside catering venues were not able to accommodate our students.
Okay, so we can start planning basically as long as we follow those guidelines.
Yes, you may.
Okay, great. And then my second thing was about the AP exams, which you mentioned earlier. So I thought that they were in May, but a teacher recently said something about it possibly being in June because the school gets to choose if we are in person. So if we are in person, which I think we are, is the date going to stay the same in May or is it going to be in June? And if we do go to school, how is the whole thing going to be with social distancing and all that? Because it's going to be all of us coming to school at once, and it's going to be, I don't know how many kids per classroom, but
right.
You know, guidelines for that.
So we have not met with the testing coordinators yet to look at what a protocol would look like to administer the AP exams. It will most likely span a period of time, a larger window of time, so that we can ensure social distancing. So I don't have an absolute answer to that yet, just my tentative answer. And the tentative answer is they will most likely be extended. The window will likely be extended for when those exams will be administered. And it may be something between May, most likely between the latter part of May and June.
Okay, got it. That's it. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you. Trustee McOwen, you had a report?
Yeah, just three quick things. First, I just want to say thank you for everyone who participated in the Trapegan book fair, which ended last week. It was very successful. We had people from lots of schools, not just Trapegan, come and participate, raise thousands of dollars for the PTA, and it'll benefit the teachers and staff there. It was more than, it was 150% of what was earned at last year's. So it was great. Second thing is for those interested, we will have, as I think we mentioned last meeting, we'll have the first subcommittee meeting for the expanding the CTE program to trades at the high school. That'll be Thursday at 1 o'clock via Zoom. Anyone can log in if they want to listen into that. And last thing is, I just want to, just take a minute, and Dr. Warman mentioned it during his part of the presentation, but last week was the 1-year anniversary of the first closure due to COVID. And I think I and everyone I know, and probably everyone in the city, has lost someone due to this disease or knows somebody who's lost someone. Many of us have lost jobs and lost opportunities and lost lots of time. So we have a lot to mourn, and I want to recognize that and not diminish it. But I also want to recognize the incredible efforts that have been made at the from the very beginning of this, from the staff. We were always ahead of the curve. We were never reacting. We were always one step ahead of many other districts, from ordering the technology and getting laptops into kids' hands, arranging for internet access, all these other things that went into it. So just thanks everyone for that. But if I had to, pick one group above all to recognize, it's our teachers. I think that over the last year, we have asked our teachers to do completely unprecedented things that no teachers have ever been asked to do. And the way that they have all stepped up is just nothing short of amazing. And I know it's been a hard year and some students have lost ground, but we can't ask any more than we've seen from our teachers over the last year. So thank you very much to all of you for the lion's work that you've put in to keep us going.
Thank you, Trustee. And I echo that. Our teachers have been extraordinary, extraordinary.
Okay. Are we ready to go on to the Trustee Turnquist Jones?
So I just want to say that I was able to go to the Trapegan book fair on a Saturday morning, and spent a lot of money on a Saturday morning during COVID. I was so happy. But I thought it was really awesome. Shout out to the PTA there. So now I'm a part of the PTA at Trapegan. And then I was able to also go back to Trapegan for their Seuss Day, their Dr. Seuss Day. And I was able to read a poem to them and watch the children hang out and be read to and celebrate reading across America. So I just wanted to just give that report. I was able, while I was there, I was able to observe the gym teacher, and it was awesome watching him with the program on. It's not a Promethean board. I think it was a smart board. Dr. Hamilton, you need to get some Promethean boards, brother. Anyway, it was a you know, the program was on a smart board, and the students were social distanced, and it was pretty awesome to watch them interact with one another. So yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you. Did anyone else have anything they'd like to report?
I don't have a report, but I just wanted to also piggyback off of thanking not only the teachers, but our maintenance people and our people in the kitchen who have to get out there on the front line and help these children. And I just wanted to say kudos to them as well.
Great. It's been an incredible team effort. It's been fantastic. Okay, anyone else?
Well, I do have a committee report.
Well, there you go. This would be the appropriate time.
Okay. I'm on the advisory council with Dr. Kim Smith. We have our meetings the first Monday of the month. So we had a meeting on March 1st. And the notes I have is that they reviewed concerns of Student Service Committee, the caseloads. They reviewed job descriptions. They reviewed the New York, I guess NYSSCA, the school counselor evaluation that's due on April 12th. And they also talked about what's next year. So the next meeting is going to be April 12th. I guess that's after the break. So that's all I have on that. It was a short meeting. Just had to get that out there. We have to have the meeting every month. That's all I have.
Great. One comment I just wanted to make, just to alert the board that Dr. Hamilton and I are going to have a presentation by some developers who I found out through a City Council Canada forum that, well, actually I made a comment to people running for City Council that I would become their worst nightmare if they were moving forward with residential development programs without revenue tax dollars associated with it. And I got a call the next day, and it was nice. Someone said, like, I heard you and I want to come in and present a new project that's, it was presented to the planning board. You could see it on Facebook if you want. But anyway, they did offer to come in and present to us. So on Thursday morning, and you know, we're ready to hear what they have to say, but we're also ready to educate and inform them about the structure of the schools now. But I think a lot of people are under misconception about how our schools are structured and the nature of neighborhood schools, et cetera, and the fact that we don't have middle schools anymore. So anyway, but I just wanted to give everybody the heads up that we are having that meeting Thursday morning.
So this is the developers, not the people running for city council, correct?
No, this is the developers themselves who, you know, they want to share with us what their plan is. And, you know, I said, we just have to be at the table. I basically said, you know, the school district has to be at the table because the impact is too great. And, you know, anyway, we all know what the story is. So that's who's presenting. Yes. And I think the onus is on us to educate them as to what it costs us on an incremental basis and what the step variables are in terms of, you could have a building with 2 students and that wouldn't have a huge impact, but you have a school with,
A building.
I mean, a building with 15 or 20 students in a neighborhood school, that has a big impact. So it's just a question of educating them as to how it works in the education world, which I'm relying on the experts to explain to them, but also the budgetary impact. So anyway, that's it. I will, if everyone's okay, I will move on to the agenda for this evening for the resolutions. We can do a lightning round. Anyway, so first I would need a motion to approve Human Resources Resolution 4.1.
Motion.
Trustee Saunders.
Second.
Trustee Patterson.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
Abstain, Jeff.
Okay.
Jeff is abstaining. Did I
Yeah.
hear somebody else? Ms. Saunders?
Opposed? Did someone oppose?
Jeff did. Didn't Jeff abstain? He
He
abstained?
abstained. He
I
abstained.
thought I heard a no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought I did too, but okay, I guess we didn't. All right, may I have a motion to approve Business Office Resolution 5.1?
Motion.
Have a second, please?
Second.
Trustee Patterson.
Thank you. Any questions about any elements of this?
No, but thank you for the donations.
Yeah, thank you. It's good news, right? When money comes in versus going out. All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye, aye, aye.
Opposed? Abstain.
Abstain, Jeff.
Jeff's abstaining. Trustee Red's abstaining. Okay, motion carries. May I have a motion to approve Business Office Resolution 5.2,
Motion.
Declaration of Emergency Work?
Motion.
Ooh, let me second this one too. I got it. I'm just gonna second.
That's your job. Okay.
I could do it.
Any questions about cleaning up the tanks?
Well, I just want to clarify that. I mean, my understanding from talking to Ms. Policio is that we have no known environmental issues. That's not what this is about. We're
Right.
not, it's not like there's an oil spill going on in the school
No, it's a
district.
compliance. It's just a clean it up, contain it, or remove it.
These are now, Mr. Policio, these are decommissioning active tanks, or these sealed tanks that aren't being used anymore?
So there's 10 tanks in 9 buildings that have not been used for over a year. The tanks range from ages of 1963 to 2002. Most of them are single wall steel construction. They've outlived their useful life. They're not used anymore because we're on straight gas. And so the Department of Health has ordered us to either close them in place or remove them.
Right, that's required by law.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor of this resolution?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. May I have a motion to approve School Improvement Resolution 6.1?
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Oh my God! Come on.
To share the fun. All right. Any questions about this resolution 6.1?
I have a question.
Okay.
The catapult learning. Can someone just fill me in? What is it's for a relatively short amount of time, the rest of this year?
Question.
Catapult Learning is used by Lady of Victory. That's the program they use. And because they're getting it from our Title I money, it have to come through us. So that's their program that they use in Lady of Victory.
But when you say it's the program, well, like what is it? Is it an after-school program? Is it a in-school?
Yes, a tutorial program, yes.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Did everybody vote? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. May I have a motion to approve School Improvement Resolution 6.1?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
6.2, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Yes.
6.2.
Okay.
In. Motion.
Any questions about MBK and Power Hour and people who are going to be working on those initiatives?
Yeah, I just had a question. Didn't we already do this at the beginning of the year? Why are we just doing this now? Is this for the whole year?
For no, what you mean for the power hour?
Well, like MBK for the 2020, 2021 school year.
Yes, yeah, but not for Brother Mohammed. We did not do Brother Mohammed at the beginning of the year.
For his
For his
team.
stipend. Yes, he get a $5,000 stipend for doing the MBK, and we did not put it in. And the only way he can be paid is if we put it in.
And all the fellows and mentors also?
Yes.
All right.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Emily, aye. Sorry. I have a very slow mute button.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion carries. Oops. May I have a motion to approve Student Services Resolution 7.1?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions about the special ed recommendations? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. We have a motion to approve Building and Grounds Resolution 8.1.
Motion.
Second.
Trustee Wanda.
Any questions about these 3 items? The change orders, there is a summary. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion carries. May I have a motion to approve Superintendent Resolution 9.1?
Motion.
Second.
Ms. Patterson.
We discussed this 2 weeks ago in executive.
Yep.
Any questions, though? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. May I have a motion to approve Board of Ed Resolution 11.1?
Motion.
Second.
McGowan.
Any questions about this? This is our regular election. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay. That is the end of our public business for this evening. May I have a motion to go into executive session
For the purpose.
for the purposes of, Mr. McCormick?
We are entering executive session this evening to talk about the employment history of a particular person or persons, as well as receive advice from counsel and to discuss current litigation between the district and the city of Mount Vernon.
Okay,
Motion. Aye.
Motion second.
What are we supposed to do? Yes.
all
Okay.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you to the community for
tell
bearing
how-
with us this evening.
Do we need to
and-
tell them how long? Are we gonna come back?
We're
or-
not coming back.
Okay.
Oh, yippee, that's good.
No offense to any of you who won't be joining us. We'll see you at the next board meeting. Thank you very much all.